मेरा बेटा भी गांव से भाग के आया था। अगर चाहता तो तेरे जैसा बन सकता था, मगर नहीं, उसने मेहनत की और डॉक्टर बना। चलो अंदर चलो। ऐसे ही दिल लगा के लोगों की सेवा कर, बहुत पुण्य का काम कर रहा है।
जी बाबूजी।
Welcome back to Gen Z Unfiltered, folks. I'm Amrit, your host, and as always, I'm joined by Ishkita. We are starting a new series on Gen Z Unfiltered called Career Talks, in which we will interview professionals, change makers, and leaders in our community to learn about their journey and how they achieve their goals. Our first guest in Career Talks is Dr. Nishant Sharma, a cardiologist. Born and raised in Saskatoon, Dr. Nishant Sharma moved to Calgary in 2019 after completing his training in cardiology. He completed his education at the University of Saskatchewan and is now board certified in internal medicine and cardiology. Dr. Sharma's education journey includes undergraduate studies, medical school, residency, and fellowship. He will be completing further training at the University of Calgary. Now, to talk about his medical career and accomplishments, I welcome to the show Dr. Nishant Sharma. Good afternoon, Dr. Sharma. Thank you for making the time for joining us today.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
nice to see you as well.
All right. So, Dr. Sharma, what inspired you to take up medicine, and when did you know that was what you wanted to do?
So for me, the decision to go through to medical school was made fairly early on in high school. And I think most people that end up pursuing that path kind of make that decision on early on in their education. And so, it was mostly a process of elimination. I wasn't really good at much else, math or anything else. And I just kind of gravitated towards the human sciences a bit more. So that when I entered University of Saskatchewan, I took some basic physiology and science courses and found myself a bit more comfortable with that area, and I was doing relatively well. And so I made the jump to, go through the admission process kind of in the first couple of years of university. And then after that, the rest is history.
Wow. So you have specialized in cardiology. So why did you choose to specialize specifically as a cardiologist? And what are some of the extra pressures and rewards that came with the specialization?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So cardiology is, one of the subspecialties of medicine. The reason I selected it is because you have a really big spectrum of patient care. And so you can focus on preventative medicine, or, the area of medicine that really helps optimize patients' health before something happens, like a heart attack or a structural problem with the heart. It has a lot of good areas for therapeutics, so lots of medicines, lots of testing, imaging. And then the area that I'm really interested in is the procedural aspects. So if, someone has a heart attack, they need to be rushed to the hospital and have that artery opened up in a timely manner. And so that specific area of cardiology always interested me because it offered the ability to work in a critical care setting and really make a difference in patients' outcomes. And so it really gave me the breadth, cardiology gave me the breadth of kind of being involved with patient care right from the beginning of preventative all the way until they have an issue such as a heart attack. So a pretty unique field that way.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you. So getting a medical degree and then a specialization is a long journey. How many years did it take you? And do you feel that you made the right career choice? And when you were studying for all those years, were they worth your time?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Amrit. It took me, I graduated from high school in 2003. And so it took me a full degree in undergrad plus a couple of years to get into medical school. And then, once you get in, that's just kind of half of the journey. Then you have to maintain a certain academic performance, and then you're among other people similar to you. And so it kind of feeds further pressure in a sense, because you have to kind of maintain a certain academic profile. But overall, can do the math. It's been 16 years of post-secondary education till when I finished. In terms of your other question about the time commitment, university is such a unique time in your overall development. And so trying to get a well-balanced lifestyle, because you're getting accustomed to a different pace than grade school. You're meeting new people. You actually have a lot of more free time, I found, in university, because you only have a few classes every day. And so it's really up to you how you optimize your free time. And so that includes studying and, personal health and well-being. And so it really tests your organizational skills. If you don't have them, you kind of develop them as a default. And you just spend a lot of time pursuing that goal. And you have to be very clear about what those goals are from the beginning. That way you're not very confused. And so I was lucky in the sense that I had a really good group of friends in undergrad that I'm still friends with till to this day. And we all had the same kind of mindset. And so it served a really good purpose in terms of keeping you focused and motivated. And then when you needed time away from your studies to relax, they were really good that way too. So we really leaned on each other going through it all. So overall, it was definitely worth it, but a lot of work.
Well, I guess speaking of all the work you've put in and all the pressure, could you speak a little bit about the anxiety and the stress that you may have experienced in high school? And I guess even throughout university when you decided that you want to go to med school, the MCAT is such a huge part of from what I've heard, part of the medical journey. So how have you been able to manage all that stress and anxiety that comes with all that?
Yeah, I think anxiety and stress come as a result of being when you feel that there's an unknown or you're unprepared, which is natural to feel as you start the process. But I think the best way to eliminate that is being prepared. So if you have a plan, you've talked to people that are just, above you in terms of age and stage, and then they can give you some good advice. That's the best thing I did is I was very humble and willing to listen to people that were ahead of me in terms of what they did, what worked, what didn't. And that really helped ease a lot of my anxiety and stress. Overall, I'm not a very anxious person to begin with. And so it takes a lot for me to feel that way. In high school, I didn't really feel a lot of anxiety. I know you guys at your stage do, because I have a nephew at a similar age and stage as you guys. And I can see it's a little bit different. I think the expectations are a little bit different than when I was growing up, which wasn't that long ago. But overall, I think if you go in with a prepared mind, with a good plan, and you stick to that plan, that really eases a lot of the anxiety. So, and then your last question about the MCAT, I actually, because Amrit sent me some of these questions before, I wrote the MCAT a very long time ago. And I know it's changed at least 2 or 3 times since I wrote it. One of the problems of growing up in Saskatoon during that time was that, internet, still didn't have formalized educational programs. So we didn't have prep courses for the MCAT. And so you were kind of left to just buying books from the bookstore to kind of figure it out on your own. But nowadays they have prep courses, which I think are pretty useful. And I've talked to some people that are just going through the process right now, and they found it really, really helpful. And so I would recommend just getting, in touch with or registered with a program that kind of outlines an itinerary for you, gives you some objectives, and that kind of helps a lot apparently. So it's very different from when I wrote it though.
Yeah, that's some powerful advice. I'll keep that in mind for sure. Dr. Sharma, would you say you were an all-rounder student in university? And if so, how did you manage school and your volunteer activities?
Yeah, I think I did a lot of my kind of extracurricular activities kind of in high school and before university, to be honest. I One of the drawbacks of for me and one of my weaknesses is multitasking. So I can't do, 10 things at once really well. And I think knowing that about yourself or knowing what works for you versus not, because at the end of the day, your priority should be to get, good grades if that's what you're pursuing or focus on your studies. If you're kind of preoccupied with the other extracurricular, like volunteer or what have you, I think you can deviate from the main goal, which is the academic performance. And so for me, I knew that, and I had done a lot of stuff in high school, whether it be with sports or volunteering through our community. Those really helped a lot moving forward. But in university, it was just strictly the books for me.
Well, what would you say has been the most challenging part or the most challenging struggle that you've had to overcome as part of this medical journey? I would guess like high school and till day.
Well, that's again a really, really good question, because I I don't think I think it's fairly rare to find someone who's gone through the whole process without some struggle or issue at some point or at every point. And for me, I would say it depends on what you define as a struggle, but you know, you could make a case that at every stage there was something to overcome, whether, it's in undergrad and maybe you get a really bad mark, or um, you have a class that you didn't do as good in and it kind of affects your overall average. Those things are very real, and I think it's easy for me now sitting, but I remember being pretty stressed out about those things in undergrad. But understanding that, this whole process is really building character, and the biggest trait really is resiliency. So you have to be able to be honest with yourself if something doesn't come out the way you want it to be, and understand what you did right and wrong, and then learn from that and then quickly adapt. And that's kind of what I was able to do. And so in undergrad, yeah, I had some semesters that weren't as good as others, but I kept working at it, got into medical school. Again, the same thing happens because the stakes are higher. You might have a class that goes wrong, but you've built that resiliency from before. And so you kind of build on your prior experiences. And then eventually you become fairly, thick skinned and able to kind of handle a lot of adversity. But I think the biggest thing is kind of building that character in that time and in that pursuit, and that will serve you well even after you're done, because struggles and hurdles don't stop in university. They're in everyday life, and as you get older, you'll experience more of them as your responsibilities go up. And so that's kind of it. You kind of learn on the go, I think, and you'll surprise yourself sometimes about how resilient you actually are. But yeah, it's not nothing that you can tell someone. They really have to go through it on their own.
All right, thank you. All of your advice today has been so wise and really helpful. But is there anything else you would like to add on to that for the young people that are interested in pursuing medicine, and anything for the South Asian parents of those young people?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So when you reached out to me, Emery, I actually did some research on your guys' group, and I saw some of your guys' YouTube videos, and just to kind of get an idea of what really is going on at your guys' stage, because it's very different than my stage. And I think, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a lot of anxiety and stress that you guys are facing kind of at the high school level, which is okay, but and stress is a good thing, but there's always like a fine balance where stress becomes too much and it actually impacts your performance. And so where that line is always hard to draw. But one thing I would suggest is when it comes to parents and parents and child relationship is that I was a lot like you guys in the sense that I wanted to do things for them because that's kind of how a lot of our values are instilled in us, and that's a very good thing. But at the end of the day, I'm sure if you ask parents deep down, they really want you guys to be happy and self-sufficient. Whether that means doing medicine or something else doesn't really matter as long as you're doing what you really want to do to the best of your ability. That should matter more than trying to meet the expectations of parents. And so that should eliminate some of the stress, because that's a lot of baggage to carry around, and I think it's had a big impact on people that I know. So try to understand that your parents will support you no matter what. If you get an A or a B, it doesn't matter as long as you're trying and you're doing your best. That's all that matters. And so that's more of the mental health aspect of it, and that has to be just as optimized as everything else. And so trying to understand that it's not, you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you at the end of the day.
So far today, we've got to hear so much of your advice and about your journey from the early stages up till now. Now, medical is an ever-growing field. You're learning something new every day. So after your graduate studies, of course, you're learning something new every day, even today. Is there something specific that doctors go through, perhaps like further studies while they're in their career path to keep up with the medicine?
Yeah, so that's one of the struggles I've had this year, because when you're in a training program like residency or fellowship, there's kind of organized, like it's still a training and educational process, and so you still have to present, every week a groundbreaking topic, and so it kind of keeps you on your heels and up to date. And then when you have to prepare for the exam at the end, the exam is always current, and so you're always really up to date until you write your exam. But then after, you're not in a training program, and so it's a lot more self-driven. And so there's lots of stuff now, especially with COVID. It's made everything almost virtual. There's no more conferences or live talks, and so everything is kind of streamed online. And so I found that really helpful. I actually got a Twitter account last year just to keep up to date with medical knowledge. And so, if you follow a host of people in your field, they will always kind of tweet or, publish up to date information. And so I found that super helpful. And it depends on what area you're in, but I'm finding everyone is kind of on some sort of social media platform. And so that has really bridged that gap, but you have to actively seek it. I found after your training, no one's giving you information. You have to go and find it. So.
Thank you. That was, for me, was a very important question, because all the time, even when you're watching or reading articles and trying to find something about a career, especially in medicine, not often do you get to see the part that comes after you become a doctor. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's one of the problems with medical education is they don't really prepare you for afterwards. So everything about the topic or the specialty, but how to run a practice or how to manage your finances, or how to stay on top of things. That's probably where most of the quote unquote stress comes from now, rather than the prior type of stress that we had before. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Dr. Sharma, for giving us the time out of your busy schedule to join us and provide us with insight on your career. You've been so inspiring to many of us, and I think everyone who is watching will really get something out of this. Everything you said was so helpful, and I hope that all the youngsters who want to go into medicine have the chance to really learn from your insight. So we hope to reach out to you again for another conversation soon. And thank you so much for watching Gen Z, everyone. We will be back with another episode next Wednesday. Until then, take care of yourselves and your cardiovascular health, and peace out.